You're dying. And at some point, everything that you have is going to go somewhere. You made a will, right? You set up your revocable and irrevocable trusts and made sure that the state will delegate responsibly, right? I mentioned the other day that something like 60 or 70% of Roman law had to do with succession, inheritance, and I think it's an interesting modern problem. I suggest all economies are human economies, all assets, all digital assets are human assets, and so why not put them in a digital account? And rather than trusting people that you don't know, let's only trust people that you do know and that you do trust. This is the BUBI Watt. When you copy a link and you send a link to your friend, that's a digital handshake. It's a mutual attestation. It is a shared reputation. It presents itself on the graph as a pseudonym, just like on Bitcoin. And so, when you write your will, when you have that handshake and you say, I want my Bitcoin to go to my heir A and 20% to go to heir B, and I want to have my digital accounts, let's have this digital account go to friend here and a third one be donated to charity, whatever. It's all possible, okay? And here's the great thing. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's just that digital handshake, and we can make sure that that will is always hanging there. It's a dead man switch. It's ready to be executed. When you sign that over, let's say you gave it like a 6-month contract or a 1-year contract, and so over time you have this digital account, it's approaching zero, and that represents your death. So you keep this account active. You and your peers keep this account active, and you're always kicking this can down the road. And so your Bitcoin inheritance, your digital access, and your friends get to check in on you. They understand, how you're doing in life. And we are social creatures. It makes sense for these to be kind of symbiotic and aligned. There's a challenge. I've been designing this and I realize it's hard to tell when somebody's still alive. We have voter fraud and with dead identities. It's going to be possible for AI to take over elderly accounts or impersonate dead people. And so, currently my design allows people to remotely mutually attest to identity and humanity. But it's going to be an important thing in the future to make sure that they're attesting in real life, in each other's presence. It can be done. It's a really difficult challenge. Well, why is it difficult? Well, because, there's no way to do that. If I collect your latitude and longitude, then, that's spoofable. I can just, if you're a good software engineer, you can cheat. And it's really easy to cheat in a lot of ways. Like if we're using NFC or Bluetooth, I can always relay that to the other side of the world. And so, if you're using biometrics, if I have a picture of your eyeball, that is your password. That's not going to work. You can use the laws of physics. You could say, well, light can only move so fast. Sound can only move so fast. You can do maybe within 1 meter, you could have an ultrasonic ping pong of a pseudo-random challenge response format where two people's phones are digitally interacting really quickly, and it's something that can't be known ahead of time. It's an interactive pattern, but that allows the phones to mutually kind of identify and pass each other's challenge, and then you can do that mutual attestation. Or you could even involve multiple peers and say, to a higher degree you trust it. Well, it's an important consideration to add later on, but in the meantime, I think that this one-to-one human account will trend towards 100% perfection with the current design that I have. And some other challenges there are to say, well, what prevents people from making a bunch of fake accounts? That's a difficult thing, So let's say you're a big cluster of users and let's say the Mormon church or something. You say, I value, my people over the world, so we're going to invent some fake identities and collect some more UBI or sway a vote or do other types of malicious activity with these new identities. That's a difficult thing. Okay, well, what you can do is you can say, well, like I said, your account value, there's time decay and it's ticking down towards zero. And so you always need to go and interact with new peers at some rate. And you can require that those peers, or you can incentivize that those peers are increasingly diverse. If you imagine kind of what a cheater cluster would look like in the graph, it would look like typically a small cluster of users that have a small bridge, connecting them to the real cluster of users. And so you can kind of identify that small world ego net, and then you can incentivize bridges to step in. And you can say, well, if you guys really are humans, then it shouldn't be so hard for you to find some other people in the world that might have some other diverse connections. So you can kind of daisy chain from there. Another thing you can do is to say, well, not all clusters of users are equal. You can kind of introduce a hierarchy and say, well, I'm the genesis, I'm the founder, and so you can just trust that my identity is real, and then we'll build like a top-down network and say, some clusters of users will be closer to me, and if they're further from me, then they're less likely to be human. And yeah, you'll just have to trust that I'm not a robot yet. I don't know. Another interesting challenge is to say, okay, this one's pretty tough. So you say Steve is going from city A to city B to city C, and this is his normal commute, and he always introduces himself as different people, and he uses different phones, and so he's kind of creating multiple identities, and he's deceiving the people around him. Well, like I said, you can always increasingly require that those edge nodes are diverse. And so another thing is you can say, well, if you notice that one user's guardian set is very differently clustered, then you can also have the protocol at some level of diversity. You can say, whoa, this is looking kind of weird, and I'm going to issue a challenge and say that you need to introduce like guardian cluster 1 to guardian cluster 2 so that those people can confirm that you're the same person. And so there can be a bit of an incentive, like a bounty format, for the system to make sure that your guardians and peers are kind of they're checking the network, they're looking for cheating. And then one of the most difficult problems, if we take that to the logical extreme, we say, okay, well, you're a nation state actor and you have, let's say, unlimited money and unlimited ability to like coerce people and cheat and lie. And so the challenge there is to say, okay, well, what I have to do is make sure that not only do these accounts become increasingly diverse and increasingly expensive, but also that cluster of users, you can build a whistleblower policy and make sure that there's a bounty to detect fraud. And so as you increase the number of cheaters that are in a cluster, you also increase the likelihood that like one of the 100 or one of the 500 people are gonna blow the whistle and collect a big reward. So it's just like the really simple way to think about the problem is like, no matter how difficult it is for the human, it's acceptable so long as it's like damn near impossible for the robots over time to cheat and have these human accounts. And so as long as I can make sure that the individual is like economically and reputationally incentivized to behave and to interact with the protocol properly, then that should be the foundation of a sustainable one-to-one human account. The prerequisite for UBI, the prerequisite for digital wills and trust and execution and trust minimized data point, data provenance, freedom of speech, and I don't know what, black market compute, among other things.